Hello, hello. People love it when I've got the double start. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sorry for a couple minutes late there. Yes, happy Mother's Day to everyone. What a day, what a day. I wanted to talk about Dorne for a second and the supposed Spanish influence of how it's supposed to be. Some people think, oh, Dorne is supposed to be Spanish, and there's even some hubbub when certain actors were cast in Game of Thrones and things like that. And what I have to say about it is that George himself, when people ask about the historical traditions of Dorne, he actually doesn't name Spain first. He actually says that for the most part, he based Dorne on Wales because they were involved more in guerrilla warfare in their mountains, resisting the English rule, and eventually were pulled into the kingdom through marriage. And though he does say, oh, and then on top of that, sure, and he says, Palestine and Andalusian Moorish Spain. But I would like to push back on this idea that Dorne is very Spanish. And one of the reasons I take a little issue with this is that I've spent a lot of time reading Dorne. I love the Dorne stories. I love obviously the deeper Dornish master plan are big part of the channel and such. But I also in college studied Spanish history, and I did my study abroad in Spain. So I also have this connection to Spanish history a bit. And first and foremost, Spanish history is not only very complicated and nuanced, it's also massively contradictory. You can say one thing about Spanish history and it can simultaneously, the opposite is also true. And it's very difficult to explain to somebody Spanish history because these two things are going on in contradiction to each other. For instance, you can learn about convivencia, which is this coexistence period in Spain, but simultaneously as convivencia is going on, and you've got intermarriage between different people in different cultures, and tolerance here and there, there's also the Reconquista going on at the same time. So everything kind of depends, it's the same kind of idea of when you say oh, doesn't America exist in contradiction? Isn't it this incredibly racist place, but also this incredibly tolerant place with interracial relationships and cultures blending and all of this? And the answer is yes, true. All of that is true at once. It is a contradiction. And Spanish history is a wonderful contradiction like that too, where you will never really understand it if you just read events on a Wikipedia page. You kind of have to read a lot of different opinions that are arguing with each other and accept that both things can be true at once. The Schrodinger's history of Spain. Now I would actually argue that this idea of Dorne being like Spain is more from the show. The show really pushed hard, really went hard into this idea of Dorne looking like Andalusia, and it's evident in the architecture. It's evident in the look of most of the actors they hired for Dorne, in the sense that they, the stereotype about Spain is that at least the southern Spanish have black hair and olive skin. If you actually go there, it's Spanish are pretty mixed up. Even in the South, not everybody looks that way, but that's the stereotype. And so the actors are hired that way. That, you know, Pedro Pascal, I mean, he's American of what, Chilean descent, but you know, he's got this olive skin, black hair look, and so we kind of associate that with this Andalusian Spain. Um, and so, but we can go through like Dorne and see, like, does anything actually, are there any similarities really to Dorne? Like, it's just kind of taken as this granted that Dorne is Spain. But I would argue, one, George knows a lot about English history, but when you get out of England, the history level drops off. I'm sure he read El Cid, I'm sure. But um, you know, there's so many things that are weird about Dorne that I'm almost like, where is the Andalusia in there? Like, what precisely is making you think about Andalusia? Um, and so I'd like to start. Let's talk about first. Um, are there kind of any historical similarities? So let's talk about like the history of these two places. Okay. So broadly speaking, Spain begins with a you know, what we would say like a prehistory period, where the only name people kind of give the first peoples there is they kind of just call them the Iberians, and then the Celts moved in, and so you kind of had this mixture of Iberians and Celts. So some people call it the Celtiberian kind of period. Uh, you know, Greeks make settlements, the Carthaginians come in, the Romans eventually take it over, and we kind of then have Roman Spain for a good period of time. Um, and when Western Rome falls, the Visigoths come in, a Germanic tribe, and so the Visigoths are there for a good 300 years. And then in 711, very famously, the Moops invade Spain, and and this is what we're going to be thinking about in the medieval period. This balance between the Christians and uh, the Muslims, you know. So if you want to frame it that way, it's not really a fantastic way to frame it, because there are Muslim kingdoms, there are Christian kingdoms. The Christian kingdoms themselves have citizens that are still considering themselves Roman descent and are under Roman law, and then there are others that are under Visigothic law. And so, like, even within the Christian kingdoms, you've got different peoples, not to mention you've got Jews who often have their own legal systems as well. Um, and so it gets complicated when you start saying, like, well, does an individual have many rights during this period? Like, how are women treated? Well, it depends. Like, everything depends. Like, which kingdom are they? Roman? Are they Visigothic? Are they Jewish? Are they Muslim? Like, and you know, who are they married to? Are you a Christian woman married to a Muslim man? Like, in a Muslim kingdom, like what rights do you have? It gets incredibly complicated when we start thinking about that. Um, so meanwhile, let's talk about Dorne. Dorne is first men and then Andals. And George has written very little, very, very little about this first men and Andal relationship, despite the fact that you're talking about nearly all of the history of Dorne being first men and Andal. Like, it's just thousands upon thousands and thousands of years. And then, you know, the Nymeria comes in with the Rhoynar. And that's the significant thing. And we kind of forget about all of this first men and Andal stuff that's just barely written about, barely talked about. And so I suppose we're supposed to think that there is some sort of similarity to the Rhoynar coming in and the Moors coming in, and it making Dorne and Andalusia somehow, very different and distinct from the rest of Europe. Which I think is a very low bar, because you can take any place in Europe, any place in the whole world, really, and say, this place is pretty distinct, don't you think? Aren't they ethnically and culturally different here? Of course, everybody is fucking ethnically and like everybody has a unique history. Everybody is ethnically diverse, like and unique, and you can take honestly any place and be like, well, don't you think it has a unique? What are you talking like specifically with like what like Muslims coming in, because Muslims came into Italy, Muslims came into Greece, Muslims came into the Balkans. Like what specifically, what is the situation that makes Spain unique in this sense, versus Dorne? Like, why isn't Dorne Greece? Why isn't Dorne Italy? Like, why isn't Dorne, Dacia, where Attila the Hun comes in? Like who knows? Like, why specifically are we thinking about the moops? I'm saying the moops. I hope you all get the joke about the moops. It, I'm not really getting it. Like, what is, so then we say, okay, well, what are the similarities between the Rhoynar and the Moors? I mean, keep in mind that the Rhoynar are a huge refugee movement where you're talking about huge displaced people coming in. So there's a massive ethnic shift. While the Moors, it's more about militaries coming in and people taking over on the top, and the peasants are the peasants. This is the big thing, is that people think about when they talk about different peoples coming in and conquering places. It's like that they tend to just conquer the upper class, and then the people are kind of all the same, it's the same peasants. It's just different rulers, And so, I would argue that Dorne has experienced a much, much larger ethnic shift than Spain ever experienced, at least from the Moorish invasion. So then you say, okay, well, all right, what else? Well, Dorne, after the Rhoynar, they had a history of resisting the Valyrians and being very stubborn, and then getting pulled in through marriage. And that completely and utterly does not describe Spain, like in any respect. Like Spain, the Reconquista began, just only a couple hundred years after the invasion, and slowly the Reconquista chipped away at the Moorish kingdoms for 800 years, until Granada was taken in 1492. So you're talking continuous successful war to militarily, take Spain, versus the Dornish, who successfully resisted and came in through marriage. So no similarity really, like when we talk about the histories. The only similarity you can really have is like, oh, there was an invasion of people. But the Rhoynar wasn't really an invasion. It was like a refugee situation. But I mean, I guess there's some battles. But like, that's it. Like, how many places have been invaded? Like, are we really using invasion as the fucking low bar for parallel structure here? I don't understand this refugee Umayyad. Like, the Umayyads were not refugees. Like, they're not refugees. I don't understand that. But yeah, so then we're talking like, okay, let's move beyond the history, because and let's talk specifically about like um, like their military equipment. Like, so Dorne is famous for having like spears. Okay. And so it's like, do you ask like, okay, was Spain famous for spears? And the answer is not really. Like they use spears. Everyone fucking used spears. Spears were great. They're great weapons. I think the Spanish might have had some special throwing spears or something, but like really minor. Like for the most part, just like the rest of Europe, just like the whole Middle East, yeah, they used a mixture of spears and swords. Like there was nothing really special about them, you know. So but let's talk about like, all right, well, what about Dornish law versus um, Islamic law under Andalusia? Um, so there is a significant shift in um, law, if we're specifically talking about Islamic law, when you have the period where they're part of the Umayyad Caliphate, and then in the 900s AD, there's an independence rebellion where they break off and form their own caliphate in Andalusia, in Al Andalus, and I mean, it's still, you know, it's still basic Sharia law. I think it's from the Maliki school and things like that. But, and, you know, are women treat, because specifically we're talking about like Dornish law, like are women treated better under, in Al Andalus versus like how they'd be in Christian kingdoms of France and England at this time? And the answer is it depends who you are, and it depends what kingdom you're under, and it depends, um, you know, like, are you a slave? Are you a uh, are you married to a Muslim? Are you married to a Christian? Are you under Muslim rule? Are you under Christian rule? All of this kind of varies. Now, that said, we have nothing in history that approaches Dornish law. Not until 19th century do we get situations where you're like, oh, the title of the house will go to the eldest child regardless of sex, like, and all inherit, and like the idea that you would have all of your inheritance go to the eldest woman is unheard of in history. Like that just does not happen. You do have more paritable inheritance. And when I say paritables, there are situations in history where, yeah, I die, I've got $100, I've got 5 children, they all get $20, depending if, you know, so you might get an even split at various moments in history. And that was not Islamic law. Islamic law is a more complicated system. The men do get more than the women. Cousins might get the same as daughters. It all depends. There's other legal disputes. It gets complicated. But there were places in Europe, in Christendom, that also had the same inheritance systems where women could inherit in a paritable fashion. So there's nothing really unique about Islamic inheritance. There's plenty of places in Christendom where people inherited in a similar fashion to Islamic law. And to say that it like somehow approaches Dornish law, and I think this kind of gets into like, for the next section, I'll talk about like the progressive status of women, you know, that Dorne seems to have. But like Dornish law is a complete ice and fire creation. It is very, very unique. We've never had something like that in on earth. Like, you know, like everywhere is sexist. Like, right. So like the idea that you would hand over your entire estate to your eldest daughter, if she happens to be an eldest child, is, I mean, I'm sure you can find some small tribe somewhere in the world, but no major civilization ever had this system. We're always very sexist. And which so like the whole premise and the whole plot about Dorne, the only thing we really know about Dorne from the beginning, from a Game of Thrones in the appendix, is that, oh, in Dorne they do things differently. Like the eldest child inherits regardless of sex. That's that has nothing to do. There's no similarity to Islamic law. Like it comes Dorne. It's completely unique Dornish law. There is no historical parallel. But this gets me into this idea of like the progressive status of women under in Al Andalus, and I think this has been kind of overstated. A lot of times you'll learn about a fact, and people love actually facts, you know, like actually pigs are one of the cleanest animals. And I'm just like, what are you fucking talking about? Have you ever been to a pigsty? They're shitting, they're shitting everywhere and they're rolling in their shit. What are you talking about that a pig is the cleanest, like a clean animal? Like you hear this stuff all the time, like, actually, bats aren't blind. They have very good sight. No, they don't. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Yeah, technically they're not blind, but they're not. No, they don't have good sight. They use echolocation. Like, you get these actually like facts that just aren't true. So this idea of like, you'll hear it a lot, like, actually in like medieval society in the Middle East, like women were treated really well. No, they weren't. They were treated shitty in Europe. They were treated shitty in the Middle East. This idea that like women had like incredible fucking rights, it's just not true. Now you can argue that like certain women had better treatment than certain women in another place. Yeah, okay. But the idea that like women were blanketly treated better, in Al Andalus is ridiculous. Like you can go to like the best period of time for them, which is probably like the 10th century in Cordoba. And you know, you hear these anecdotes like, oh, there was this one school where there's like 170 like literate women, and you're like, wow, you know, like 170 women got learned to read, you know, or like, you know, they'll find like one woman who was like running a library and they write a story about him. I mean, in comparison, you could easily go to Saudi Arabia today and you'd be like, oh, would anyone say that women are treated well in Saudi Arabia? You'd be like, no. But then you could just point to a family and they'll be like, but that guy sent his daughter to Oxford, and you know, she has all sorts of rights and she travels by herself all the time. And you're like, oh yeah, but that's an anecdote. That's an exception to the rule. Like for the most part, life sucked for women. So life sucked for women in Spain for the most part just as bad as it sucked for women in the rest of Europe. You know, you can get into really specific things like, oh, did they have the right of divorce? Well, it depends. Like, it depends. Divorce was actually kind of complicated and hard in medieval Spain. It's actually probably easier for Muslim women to get divorced today than it was in medieval Spain. You know, you needed husband's approval and it was complicated. I think, you know, and the Christians, the under Visigothic law, they had like divorce too, but again, you needed to prove adultery. Those that could prove Roman descent could get divorced for any reason. So like if you could prove Roman descent in various kingdoms, you probably had the best rights. But, you know, don't ever talk, like it gets very complicated. But yeah, this idea that like, and also like the treatment of bastards, like, okay. No, like bastards are not treated well in under Islamic law either. You can't inherit, like there's no adoption. under Islamic law, so like you can't inherit and things like that. So like all these things are, the treatment of bastards being better, the treatment of women being better. Not really, not really, or at best, it's complicated. Is about all you can do. So what do we have left? We got maybe some food. Like you got, okay, George kind of describes Dorne as having olives. I'll grant the Mediterranean has olives. So it's not really uniquely Spanish. I mean, fucking southern France, Italy, Greece, they're all eating fucking olives all day long. I don't see why it's specifically Spanish. The same with like chickpeas. Chickpeas are all over Greece, Spain, Italy. Red wine, yes. Generally speaking, red wine grows better in hot, sunnier climates. White wine is for more northern climates. So if you go to Germany, they have really nice white wine. But if you go to Italy and Spain, they have much better red wine. Sure, but again, not uniquely Spanish. Mediterranean, maybe. Pomegranates, they're all over the Mediterranean. The only thing that's kind of very uniquely Spain, oranges are associated with Spain today. Obviously, we think of Valencian oranges, but they, back in the Middle Ages, they didn't have sweet oranges in Spain. Certainly not blood oranges, which are a very modern thing. I will grant that lemons were kind of specifically grown in Spain and Al-Andalus during the Middle Ages, and the rest of Europe didn't really have them. So I will grant lemons. And then he brings up hot peppers, and hot peppers are all from the New World. So that's not even a thing. That's not a thing in Spain. Spanish cuisine today, you never think of Spanish cuisine as being spicy. Like Latin American cuisine, sure, but not Spanish cuisine. Spanish cuisine, you generally think of Spanish cuisine as like, lots of pork, lots of pork, some octopus, some potatoes, tapas, like, but some paella, like what do you like? But I don't think of hot spicy peppers for Spain. I don't know, So okay, what else we got? We got climate. Dorne is a fucking desert. Spain has one very tiny desert called Tabernas. And granted, it's the only desert in Europe, but it's not that big. It's one tiny part of the country. Spain, for the most part, has a very, very diverse climate. You've got parts of Spain that are incredibly rainy. You have parts of Spain that are incredibly arid. You've got plateaus. You've got mountains. It's valleys. It's a very diverse climate. More diverse than, France or England or Germany. But this idea that like there's deserts where you'd have like sand steeds going across, finding oases, like, this isn't like Egypt or Saudi or something, or Bedouins. When George says like, oh, I base it on Spain and Palestine, like Palestine, like the like the actual like besides the South where no one lives, like one of the more tree filled areas of the Middle East, like this isn't like Jordan or the Arabian desert, it's just, so the desert thing, not Spanish, like just not Spanish, like Spain isn't a fucking desert. Like it's one tiny thing. So the only other thing that I got is is the water gardens. And I would say that, like, okay, the water gardens, that's kind of a reference to the Alhambra in Granada. So I suppose we can give that. So I've got two things. All right. We got lemons and we got water gardens. That's the only. Now, of course, the water gardens were not. The Alhambra was not public in any respect. Like, it's a very different situation than Dorne. But this is pretty much it. Like, these are the only two things that I can really say are the similarities between Dorne and Andalusia. But that's about it. But that's the question. Is, does George know that Spain isn't a desert? I don't. That's the thing, right? I don't know. I think that he's basing things off of some sort of idea or stereotype that he has in his mind about things, you know. Because, like I say, like George takes the stereotypes and legends about the Middle Ages and turns them up to 11. Like, was there really Lord's right to the first night? No, not really. But he throws that in, you know. Were there really trials by battle all the time? Probably not. You know, I'm sure, yeah, they existed, but, you know, how often were they going on? Um, you know, it's one of these things, like, it's just that. So it's, and like I say, like, George's knowledge of the War of the Roses in England and English history is great. But, you know, if I were writing someplace that's supposed to be similar to Andalusia, it would be nothing like Dorne. It would just not be like Dorne at all. Like, it just on every sense, like their garb, their armor, their history, their society, how women act, all of these things, it's completely unique. Like, Dorne has more similarities to modern Western society than it does to medieval Spanish society or medieval Palestinian society or medieval. I mean, his thing on the Welsh was pretty much the guerrilla warfare and being pulled in through marriage, but that's all I kind of have to say about it. Like, also, like, oh yeah, the other things about Dorne, like river focused, like green blood, like where does that fucking come from? That's not Spain. Like, it's kind of a reference to Egypt, I guess, if you're talking about like coming from the Rhine. I mean, coming from the Nile, coming from the Rhine, and like having this river-based society. But considering that, like, Dorne, like, there's no religious difference between Dorne and the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, other than this, like, the green blood people kind of liking the old man turtle thing. There's just nothing. Like, everybody just worships the faith of the seven, and they speak the same language, and it's not a dispute. When you're basing it on Spain, and you're like, oh well, the big thing about Andalusia is that they were Muslim. Like, it's a pretty big difference. It was religious, and it's just like not a thing with Dorne. So, like, what is the thing with Dorne? Well, it's Dornish law, which is completely utterly different. Like, Dornish law has nothing to do with Islam, at all. So I don't know what we're doing. So that's my thing. I just want to, like, put it out there that, like, because people, it's one of these things that people go to all the time, like thinking about Dorne in the Spanish lens. And I'm just like, what fucking lens is that? Lemons and water gardens? That's all you fucking got. Like, there's no similarities otherwise. And I understand it's like, even out of George's mouth, Spain is down the list. Like, well, Wales is number one. And then he kind of throws it in. And then he says, after saying Spain and Palestine, he's like, or it's just Dorne. It's unique. So George himself kind of admits it's not really based on Spain. You know, it's mainly its own unique thing. And if anything, it's on Wales. So somehow the show has put in our minds that it's Spanish. And so that's where we are. And Pedro Pascal. We can blame it all on Chilean American Pedro Pascal. I'll put lemons and water gardens. That's about it. Getting into spicy politics already. Thoughts on the new SCOTUS ruling? I mean, even Cersei is probably open to Dornish law. Are we fucked forever? Give me hope. Fanfic banging, by the way. Thank you, Kyle. Hopefully, I'll pass the Dany chapter onto the editors this week. I haven't been happy with it because it just doesn't. I don't feel like it feels like Dany's emotion or sounds like Dany. So I've just been like mulling it over. But on the SCOTUS ruling, yeah, no, obviously it causes me a lot of anxiety about gerrymandering and things like that. And I still think that the Democrats are going to take the House in the midterms, and hopefully they can try to fix some shit in there. But like, again, this is gerrymandering has been a problem for a couple decades now. And yeah, there needs to be a big fucking fix on it. And yeah, the Supreme Court is about as, disgusting and craven as we expected them to be. I mean, we're talking about the Virginia Supreme Court, and then the National Supreme Court did two rulings really close to each other that kind of fucked the Democrats with regards to representation. Yeah, it's fucked. We'll probably still win. That's the hope. Specifically with Virginia, everyone was really upset about Virginia because that was going to be 5 seats. And the thing is, what people are like thinking, oh no, that's 5 more seats. No, it's not 5 seats. Like, that it would have been 5 seats, but keep in mind that like we would have won 2 or 3 anyway because of the Democratic wave. So it's 2 or 3. It's like 2 or maybe 3 that we've been cost by the Virginia Supreme Court decision. So it's sad. Every seat is sad. It's but are we fucked over forever? We're fucked over forever for reasons worse and more fundamental than gerrymandering. Like, what's the cause of gerrymandering? Well, it's a fucked Supreme Court. So that's a big fucking problem. But even beyond that, there's an entire segment of society that doesn't believe in popular democracy and doesn't care. Like, they do not fucking care and are completely fine with fascism. And this goes beyond Trump. Like, we know Trump is gonna, he's gonna die soon. It's and so, but the thing is this huge movement of American fascism is still there. And it's who's their next guy? Who's their next guy? And so, just you keep fighting. You keep fighting because the big problem is something else. There's something fundamentally wrong with America and the population. Trump is a symptom. Gerrymandering is a symptom. The problem is there's a real desire of a large segment of the population and people with a lot of money to go full fucking fascist. So I don't know. We keep fighting. That's all I can do. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. I love getting the downvote from the fascist. so, so Roberts has 20 kids, right? Do we even know half? Should they play a role? I mean, if kings can legitimize bastards, shouldn't like Aegon legitimize one and make him Lord of Storm's End? Edric at least should come back. So no, we don't. We have no idea how many bastards Robert has. Okay, this idea that Robert has um, 17 bastards or whatever comes from Maggie the fucking frog. Okay, who is just like making shit up. Okay, there's no confirmation of that. It's very weird that the fandom is immediately like, well, he's got 17 kids. Well, why? Maggie the frog said so. Wow. Like we have no idea he has that many bastards. Okay. We've none. Um Now the should they all play a role? I mean, a lot of them are. We've got Mia Stone and we've got Edric Storm and we've got Gendry. We've got three of them already in the story who are playing roles. I don't know like how many more you want to fit in. I don't think they'll ever be brought up. I mean, we obviously had Gendry almost have sex with his half sister or whatever in the story. One of the other bastards and stuff like that. But should Aegon legitimize one and make him Lord of Storm's End? I don't know how that helps him. Right? I mean, if you're trying to pull in your like lords, does legitimizing Edric Storm and making him Lord of Storm's End, um, does that are they all sitting? Are all the like lords sitting around being like, oh, the one thing I want in life is for a Baratheon to be the Lord of Storm's End? Like, why? Like, why would they be so attached to that? I mean, the Baratheons haven't even been the Lords of Storm's End for that long, like 300 years. Uh, you probably get more support by handing Storm's End to a different Stormlord or a different, very powerful person with a lot of military backing. Edric Storm has no military backing. It's just on this, just on this idea that some person longingly like wants a Baratheon for no reason. I mean, I get that we kind of have that feeling in the North, but it's also like these are people that like had attachment to Ned and stuff like that, you know. Or I guess sometimes we hear about the small folk like feeling attachment and wanting continuance. So that's why you have Lancel marrying Gatehouse Amy, so that the idea is that, oh well, that's a dairy. Gatehouse Amy is part dairy, so there's a continuance. So somehow that's justified. Why the small folk would give a fuck about that, I don't know, but they do apparently. So I guess in that sense, maybe if you want to win over the Stormland small folk, maybe you would have Edric Storm. But the problem is that legitimizing Edric Storm, like, Robert was king, so now you're creating a claimant. If it were anybody else, if we're talking about a Tully bastard or a Stark bastard or a Martell bastard or a Tyrell bastard, maybe you could make that argument, but I just don't know why anyone would ever want to create a Baratheon claimant. I mean, Robert was king. His son would come right after him. Why would any king create a rival claimant? For the abstract idea that a few small folk are going to appreciate it. Just you know, um, just just it would be smarter if you were going to try to pull that off, like pull in the feelings of the small folk. You'd legitimize Mia Stone and marry her to one of your allies, because it's a woman and she wouldn't have the same claim, you know. If you were going to do something like that, you wouldn't choose Edric, you'd choose somebody else. um to the use Spain as a comparison in history, uh, because because it should be important but hasn't done anything in the last 70 years. Oh, poor Spain. I mean, I think Spain hasn't done anything important in longer than that. I mean, it had its nice civil war. Spain, poor Spain has gotten beaten up on for a while. I mean, ever since the Armada, right? Spanish Armada. That's the last time Spain was really rather important. After that, that was 1588. After that, Spain was just. But I get the joke. It's a funny idea that Dorne is supposed to be important and somehow isn't. Um, which is it's it is kind of funny about Dorne, because George R. Martin, he wrote the Oberyn character, and the Oberyn character pops off the page. He's great. Everybody falls in love with Oberyn in the book, as they fell in love with Pedro Pascal in the show. And George does try to expand on the Dornish story and make people like the other Dornish characters. But I don't know anybody that really likes the Dornish characters all that much. Like, no one's jumping, no one's going crazy over Arianne. No one's going crazy over Darkstar. Or Quentin. I like the Dornish story only because I like the underdogs, and it's an interesting. There's interesting stuff going on, but yeah, I mean, George has kind of failed to recreate Oberyn. Maybe he shouldn't have killed him off. Maybe Oberyn shouldn't have been killed off. Because it's just nobody is as compelling, like as Oberyn Martell was. Since we're pushing back on Dorne equals fantasy Spain, can we also push back on the Reach equaling medieval Northern Italy? Yeah, I mean, probably. Italy also was just incredibly complicated history after the fall of Rome, and all the tiny little fiefs here and there. It's really hard to find a lot of historical parallels. Other than the obvious War of the Roses stuff, uh, and you could claim some Venice stuff with Bravos, but after that, stuff really starts falling apart. Really starts falling apart. The Dothraki being like Attila the Hun. It all starts. You can see at least in those situations with Bravos and the Dothraki, I can see where they're coming from. I can be like, okay, I see it. The Dothraki going to cities and demanding tribute like Attila the Hun. Yeah, I get it. Attila the Hun didn't really act like the Dothraki at all, but I understand at least you're taking the most famous thing about Attila the Hun. The fact that he comes from a nomadic culture. He himself probably wasn't nomadic, but a generation back, his culture was nomadic, and demanding tribute from Eastern Rome in the same sense as Attila's. The Dothraki are demanding it from the free cities. So at least like you're taking the most famous things and being like, and now we've created it. With Bravos, you're like, what's the most famous things about fucking Venice? Well, they're fucking canals and they're banks, right? Like, I mean, I suppose that some of the most famous things. What the thing is, if I said like, what's the most famous thing about about medieval Spain, the first thing you'd say is, well, yeah, they were Muslims. There were a lot of Muslims and they're fighting Christians. Like that's the most famous thing. And that's not Dorne. That's not Dorne at all. So then you start going down the list, like, wow, what else? Uh Inquisitions, like you know, that no, that's not Dorne either. Like, well, persecution of Jews, like what do you like? Nope, that's not Dorne. Like you go down the list and you're like, what is it? Like what's the most famous thing? And it's just not Dorne. Because you're like, oh, women inheriting in the same stature as men. No, that's not medieval Spain at all. Spicy peppers and loose women. Nope. Like that's not Islamic. That's not Islamic Spain. That's not medieval Spain at all. So what are we doing? You know, uh, fiercely independent, vengeance obsessed people. Nope. Like that's not medieval Spain either. Like it's just, so I don't know, what it is. Getting betrayed through having marriages betrayed by, no. Why has George made the phrase so important in the story? Also, tell Trey to contact the artist J. Foliveras to paint Caligula. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess Trey likes Caligula as much as the next guy. But why has George made the phrase so important? I think he I mean, a lot has to do with just the importance in the story of like, okay, you needed someone to betray Rob, and they did, and now you need them in the story as like the aftermath. Does it make sense, like, that say they're more important than the Malisters at Seaguard? I don't know. But I think it's just in the sense that, well, they killed Rob, so now, and Cat, and so now you need them to be characters to see what happens to them next, whether it be vengeance against them or whatever. I mean, that's just what's happened, is that the second place people took over and now they're here. I mean, does it make sense that the Boltons are so important? Like, that they have so many fucking forces compared to anybody else? I don't see why the Boltons would have so many men, compared to, say, the Manderleys, who should have possibly more people than the Starks, considering that they have a huge fucking city. But no, I don't. It's only in the sense that they played the character in the vengeance sense, and now we need to know what happens to them next. And also, in a location sense, they're in the Riverlands, and everything happens in the Riverlands in Ice and Fire, because location, it's just everything goes through the Riverlands, so it just becomes the most important place, really. So yeah, I mean, that's about it. It's just they played a role, and now we need to know what happens to them. Why George R. R. Martin made the Dornish so cruel? Also seems conquering desert with dragons would be easier. I mean, obviously, it's a little ridiculous that the Dornish are able to resist the dragons. Like, this idea that they just hid in caves or deserts, and the dragons spun around and couldn't find food or something. I mean, I guess if the dragons really if they require refueling all the time, and they need to eat, and there's just nothing to eat, um, you know, uh, maybe it might work, but it's George had to come up with something, right? He had to come up with something, some little weakness for why the Dornish weren't pulled into the kingdom, how they were able to win, um, how they were like the Welsh, but why are they so cruel? Are they more cruel than everybody else? I mean, I'm just I'm gonna explore that question for a second. Like the Targaryens, like Aerys, was cooking people alive, was ready to burn King's Landing down. Um, the Freys did the Red Wedding. The Lannisters, you know, had smashing kids against walls and stabbing them. Um, Tywin is hiring people to just uh, torture the small folk in order for military objectives. Um, the Boltons flay people. So I mean, I'm not saying that Oberyn Martell isn't a dick, and Tyene Sand and Obara and Lady Nym aren't dicks. Like they're horrible, but at the same time, like, is everybody else that bad? We don't really know what Dorne is like, but Arianne is not that bad. Like Quentin and Arch and Drink aren't that bad. We don't really know. So are they so cruel? There's a lot of horrible people in the story, and I think maybe the Dornish are just par for the course. You know, I I don't they don't seem much better or worse than anybody else. When you start thinking about how bad the Ironborn are. I mean, the Ironborn participate in slavery and rape as like a regular part of their culture. You know, everyone in Essos is doing slavery. The Lannisters are horrible. They're horrible, horrible people. Um, Cersei gave people to Qyburn to torture. Tywin is killing innocents constantly. The Boltons are flaying people. Stannis is sacrificing people and burning them alive. Uh, so the Dornish talking about poisoning people, um, and wanting to maybe kill some children. Um, I mean, in the case of the Sand Snakes, that's about it. They're par for the course. Like, there's so many bad characters, and the Dornish, and we're talking specifically about like the Martell family here because we don't really know that many other Dornish except for Drink and Arch and Darkstar and Garrett and Spotted Silva. I mean, we don't know that many. Aaron Santigar never did anything wrong. Aaron, so free Catalonia and the Basques. Yeah. Well, I always laugh about that. I was like, the poor, the tyranny of the Spanish government with their democracy. So brutal, so brutal. Um, I'm not saying this proves Dorne is Spain, but on the topic of spears, the Spanish Turco pike and shot formation was extremely influential. Turkio. Um, let's find about this. Oh, well, the problem here is the time period, though, right? So we're out of the Middle Ages when the Turkio comes into play. It's the same with like the Swiss the Swiss square, and it kind of destroying cavalry, right? All right, because this is Turkey founded like 1534. You know, it's kind of the very, very end of when you consider the Middle Ages, right? We usually think of the Middle Ages ending with, that's the thing, is like we think of what the Middle Ages kind of ending in the 1400s, right? So, I mean, the Spanish are very influential, it's true, but we're talking specifically medieval Spain, right? And not to mention, I mean, George said specifically Moorish Spain. So, like, anything that the Reconquistadors are using is specifically not what he's referring to. Don't we associate Spain because of the weather? Like I say, it's not like, yeah, Spain is obviously warmer than the rest of Europe, but like it's not a fucking desert. like 99% of Spain is not a desert. It's got a very, um very, very diverse climate. Uh so it's, you know, Galicia is very rainy. They've got plains, they've got mountains, they've got valleys, there's humid parts, there's dry parts. It's incredibly diverse. Um, you know, I mean, keep in mind, like, Spain was the dominant country in the world, okay? Like, they were the most powerful country in the world. Um, Huge seafarers. Oh my God, like, and the Dornists don't have ships, right? Like famous seafarers, the Spanish, you know, they had trees. You know, they were able to cut down trees um, and build ships. In fact, when you talk to the Spanish, they say that in the past it was more forested. There used to be a statement that a squirrel could go from the Pyrenees to Gibraltar with never touching the ground, was like a statement, and that there was some climate change in Spain. That it's actually probably more arid than it was during the Middle Ages. That it probably, you know, because didn't they say like Middle Ages, what do they talk about, the mini ice age in the Middle Ages? There's this theory that, yeah, there's a theory that that one of the reasons why Europe fell into backward times into the Middle Ages was because of global cooling during the Middle Ages, and that cooled the Middle East, which caused it to have prosperity and more food and resources and things like that. That the reason that the Middle East did better and Europe did poorer was because of climate change. And so, you know, you got to remember that, yeah, during this period, Spain is even less like Dorne. Like, it's still not like Dorne at all. But during the Middle Ages, it's even less like Dorne. If the theory is true that there is all this climate change and it made big differences, but you know, but yeah, the little ice age. But yeah, they got lemons down in Spain. Yeah, you know, uniquely, Al-Andalus did cultivate lemons while the rest of Europe did not. Um, During the Middle Ages, you know. Where the heck does Westeros get all their dyes? We hear nothing of crops like indigo. Food in a land with such volatile seasons, and what foods for such vibrant dyes? Never mentioned in trade either. It must be from trade. I will say that Westeros, based on the number of ships and ports and everything, Westeros seems to trade a lot more than medieval society did. Keep in mind that like Roman society traded a lot, but during the Middle Ages, we got this. There's the big myth about European society falling back. There was incredible progress made specifically with agriculture during the Middle Ages. All of a sudden, you could grow a lot of food locally during the Middle Ages versus the Romans, who were importing all this grain from Egypt and things like that to support itself in Rome and stuff like that. So there were huge agricultural advancements in the Middle Ages, which made like local, like, people are just not starving as much anymore. And so trade really dropped. There was wool trade. There was massive wool trading. And obviously you're going to try to get some spices, but like, it's really hard to get your, spice trade all the way through. I mean, you're talking about like, you got spices in India that have to make it through, the Ottoman Empire and through Byzantium and into through all these kingdoms. It's just really fucking tough. And so, you can, so this is why like their food kind of got pretty bland then. I mean, it was really important to have like onions and stuff. But yeah, Westeros is not that. Westeros seems to be trading with the free cities easily, readily. But you're right that we don't hear about the dyes. There should be dyes, but I'm assuming that they're all coming from Essos. To have all their colorful clothes or something. But yeah, we don't, maybe they're growing it locally. I don't know. Maybe. We don't hear that much about crops, period. Don Quixote helped a half Muslim, half Christian girl escape Muslim North Africa back to Christian Spain. Yeah, Don Quixote Cervantes is a very, very interesting man. He was actually kidnapped by pirates, North African pirates, and spent years in captivity. And interestingly enough, though, he had a very nuanced, tolerant opinion of Muslims. And he lived during a period of time after the forced conversion of Muslims in 1492, and essentially the creation story of Spain, right? You've got is when Queen Isabel of Castile and Leon marries King Ferdinand of Aragon, and then together they come together and they get their armies and they take over Al-Andalus and kick out all the Muslims. That's like the creation myth story of Spain, right? That's when Spain began. Now the thing is after this kicking out of the Muslims, they, for the most part, they didn't kick out most of them. They said to all the people, hey, you got to convert to Christianity. And keep in mind, you're some like random peasant. You do not give a fuck. You're like, fine, I'm Christian now. Just don't fucking kill me. I need to get out back to the field. Okay. Like they do not care. So most people converted. And for the next like 100 years, everybody was like, yeah, I convert. And then for the next 100 years, there was this period of like de-Arabizing Spain. And they kind of said to they're like, yeah, all these people said they converted to Christianity, but we don't believe them. And so they actually had like pork tests. And one of the reasons people think that there's so much pork in Spanish cuisine is from these pork tests. They're like, you know what we should do? is we should make all the food like fully pork related, and that way we can tell who the real Muslims are. Because I mean, we can tell who the secret Muslims are because they won't be eating like the pork. Um, but also there's this their Arabic was still spoken. And so it took a while before Arabic was eventually banned. And Cervantes specifically on that thought that that was really sad that Arabic was banned and was dying as a language. And so Don Quixote is actually, it actually says it's, he's making it up. It's part of the story, but he says, "Oh, this is translated from Arabic," and you're reading a translation. The original is in Arabic. So so despite having this like um, this traumatic experience where he should be like hating Muslims and hating Arabs, he didn't. He had a very very nuanced opinion about Muslims and Arabs. So anyway, very fascinating life, Cervantes. Is this a parallel Earth where the Dodgers never left Brooklyn? I recall you streamed about Dorne 2 years ago. To you, where did Tana and Orlin flee to? I mean, the last one, I think they just went back to what is it? Long Table? What's the name of their? Um, yeah, it's Long Table. I think they just went back to Long Table. I don't think they went anywhere interesting. I don't think there's any idea that they went somewhere else. But I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure I've streamed about Dorn a few times. I streamed about a lot of stuff. I don't think I've ever talked about this topic. But yeah, what he's talking about with the parallel Earth where the Dodgers never left Brooklyn, we're talking about uh, doorways. George has this opening where he talks about different worlds, and he's like, you know, uh, and one of the worlds he has all these. I forgot some of the things where dinosaurs still roam the earth or something, and then he's like, a world where the Dodgers never left Brooklyn, and it's such a New York area focused thing that no one in the rest of America would give a fuck about. Like they'd be like, who cares? It's like if I sat here and talked to you about the Baltimore Colts all day, you'd be like, who fucking cares about the Baltimore Colts? You're not from Baltimore, you know? Like it's just one of these weird things like New Yorkers thinking that like the rest of the world cares about things like that. Also, it's food with flavor and is progressive. I mean, like I say, like there was nothing specifically progressive about Al Andalus. Um, you could argue that yes, certain parts of Europe were definitely more restrictive than Al Andalus, and certain parts of Europe were less restrictive, and a lot depended upon how much money your family had, whether you were a slave, whether you were married to a Muslim man. Um, Again, if you were a Christian, if you were a Muslim living under Christian rule or a Christian living under Muslim rule, um, if you were of Visigothic descent or if you were of Roman descent and all sorts of things. But um, there, I would not be able to say that like you are blanketly better off as a woman in Al Andalus than somewhere else in Europe. You'd have to go on a case by case basis, kingdom by kingdom, to determine that. Like how much and your like situation, like what are you looking for? Are you looking to inherit property? Like, and how much property are you looking to inherit? Are you looking to get a divorce? Are you looking to have employment? Like, what specific thing are you looking for? And was that allowed? Because the answer of whether it was allowed depended on where you were and who you were. Um, you know, that's the thing is like, I can take Saudi Arabia. You can say, oh, Saudi Arabia is very restrictive. Well, no, if you're from a really rich family in Saudi Arabia, you're fucking partying all day long. You can go anywhere you want in the world. You've got money and wealth. It doesn't matter. You know, you're a rich Saudi. So, you could say like, oh, my life is really good and Saudi Arabia is progressive. Well, progressive for people that have millions of dollars, like, I mean, because there's definitely that culture in Saudi. Like, there is, to say there aren't party girl Saudis, like, you know, like people like, if you guys remember like young Paris Hilton or something, like if you think like those women don't exist in Saudi, of course they do. But you would never say Saudi Arabia is like progressive place. Well, but if you have lots of money, I mean, it's kind of, very similar things going on here when we're talking about like what place is better for women. Well, which women, you know, it's very hard to be like blanketly, this place is better when you're talking about all these tiny little kingdoms with different rules. But yeah, as for food flavor, um, Spanish food, what's progressive about Spanish food's flavor? Spanish food is delicious, but it's not spiced differently than the rest of like, Europe. Like, it's not filled with like, um, it's not like, you don't have hot peppers, or anything like that. It's not filled with saffron, it's nothing. It's, Spanish cuisine's great, but it's a lot of seafood. It's generally fairly bland. It's nothing super crazy going on in it. Don't the desert's climate exclude whales? I know, but he's just saying specifically like the main thing he talks about with Dorne is that he thought that the Welsh and their resistance, their guerrilla warfare, is what we would call it today. Um, is the thing that made it the most Welsh, that made Dorne the most Welsh. That they were hiding in the mountains against these English, and eventually they're pulled in from through marriage. Mm-mm-mm. Let's check some things here. Mm-hmm. Um, Dorne is a Dune reference, maybe. I mean, there's definitely a lot of parallels with Dune in Ice and Fire, specifically when you start talking about like the Maester conspiracy and it being very similar to Bene Gesserit. Um, but the thing is that became like a general trope in fantasy literature, because you could also say, well, isn't the same thing going on in Wheel of Time? That there's this conspiracy group of advisors that are manipulating the royalty, you know, um, with the Aes Sedai in Wheel of Time and stuff like that. But so I can't say yes. Um, um, anyway, I'm going to push back on the cage here. No, the Democrats are perfectly fine. This idea that both sides are horrible has no, like, has no place in fact. Like, I can take any issue, like any major issue, and you start saying like what are the differences between the parties? Like, okay, like the Democrats like believe in like democracy and peaceful transfers of power, and that, you know, elections are not stolen. The Republicans tried to literally have a coup and claim that elections are stolen and all of that. So the Democrats actually believe in the system, like the political system, and the Republicans do not. Like that's first and foremost. Like the Democrats are pro-choice and the Republicans are against reproductive freedom. So that's another huge one. The Democrats believe in climate change and that we should do like laws to help the environment, while the Republicans think climate change is a hoax. Um, the Democrats believe that we should have like science and we should do vaccines, and the Republicans believe like shut down the CDC and like uh, believe that, you know, whatever, vaccines make you gay. Like almost anything. Like the Republicans start random wars with Iran, you know, which the Democrats would not have done. The Republicans shut down USAID and killed 1 million people. Like I don't, I can't, I just, it's such a dumb position that I don't know how anyone can have it. Like it's just so ridiculously dumb. Like I just don't know what issue you're looking for. Um, when we're talking about this, like there are violently different parties in America, very clearly different. Like the Republicans are talking about like they're rounding up people and trying to strip them of citizenship and deporting them with like, you know, the ICE Gestapo. Like, would the Democrats be doing that? So like, what the fuck is fascist about the Democrats? Like, it's such a dumb comment. I can't, like, it makes me so just like upset that like there's human beings that could somehow take two things that are so clearly fucking different and be like, you know, they're the same. You know, like you've got like a literal turd in one hand, and then you have like a sandwich, like a regular sandwich. No, just like with lettuce and tomato, and you know, it's not perfect. It's bologna. It's fine. It's not perfect. And you're sitting there going, well, these both suck. These are both horrible. No, they're very clearly different things. Very fucking clearly different things. In no way are they similar. I mean, the way you get into the similarities when you're like, oh, but you know, there's some Democrats who are getting supported by crypto, you know, or like, oh, you know, there's some Democrats that are super pro Israel. Well, okay. You want to get on these like tiny little issues like that? Sure. There's some Democrats that do this and some Democrats that do that. There's some Democrats that are super into military contractors because, you know, Lockheed Martin is located in Maryland. Sure. But on the big things, like on the big fucking things, like, do you want tax cuts for billionaires? Well, Republicans want that and Democrats don't. Like abortion, the environment, immigration, like just the hugest differences, the hugest fucking differences. And you can't see the fucking, and you think they're the same. Like, I don't know what you're looking for. I just don't know what you're looking for. Like, how different? Like you literally have an insane person bombing Iran and starting a useless war that has spiked, you know, gas prices and have killed little schoolgirls for no reason. And you're like, that's exactly the same as the fucking Democrats. How? Like, what world do you fucking live in? I just don't fucking get it. It's so fucking dumb. It's so insanely dumb on such a fundamental goddamn level. Like, how can you say like that a party that's literally trying to ban abortion and one that believes in reproductive rights are the same? Like, it's diametrically opposed. It's such a fucking huge issue. Just don't fucking get it. Since it's not foreshadowing a literal climb to power anymore, why did Jaime decide to sit on the throne after killing Aerys? You know, it's funny that we never really get into that, right? Like he never really explains it. I think it had to do with just the idea of like taboo. Like, you know what? I've killed the king. I'm just going to do something that's really atrociously taboo. Climb up the, I was never allowed to sit in this chair, and I'm going to be fucking sitting in this chair at the top. Because you're right that like it's a statement like I'm king now. It is. That's how I would see it if I walked in the room. I'd be like, "Are you trying to say you're king?" But he's not trying to say he's king, and he never wanted to be king. But you are right that originally, George's plan was for Jaime to be king. But for some reason, like he actually like in the original outline, he kills Joffrey to become king, kills his son to become king. So it's not foreshadowing. And why did Jaime sit on the throne? I guess he's just like, because Jaime's an edgelord and wanted to like do some crazy taboo shit. I mean, he's into fucking his sister and he's into killing kings. Why not fucking sit on the sacred Iron Throne? That's the best I can come up with, really. If it were a regular throne, like if it were a show throne, like you could say he was just feeling tired and just plopped himself down. But it's not, right? Like we know you've got to climb all those fucking stairs and avoid all the fucking sharp barbs and like not lean back and all of that stuff, or else you're going to get stabbed. So it's a real crazy like statement. But I think of Spain cause movie I'll mention below. Oh, Sexy Beast. Is that a movie? Oh, I see. Sexy Beast is a 2000 black comedy crime directed. And they go to Spain. Spanish film, by the way, is. I mean, this isn't a Spanish-made film, right? But I will say, having seen a few Spanish films, I will say that it's. I guess it is a Spanish film. It's a UK-Spain production. But my first exposure to how crazy Spanish film is this movie called Airbag. Which this is kind of in the era of Pulp Fiction had come out and everybody wanted to be super extreme. And so you guys see this movie Airbag, and let me say that the premise of this movie is that this guy is at his bachelor party, and they go to a sex worker den, and he loses his engagement ring up the ass of a sex worker. And the rest of the movie is him trying to get that engagement ring back from the drug ring that owned the den. And I mean, there's a lot of funny fucking scenes in it. It's so like there's this ridiculous scene where they've hidden a kilo of cocaine inside the airbag of the car to smuggle it, and he gets into a car accident, and all of the cocaine like just explodes inside the car, so he's just like all hyped up now for like the rest of the movie. I mean, there's a lot of crazy crazy fucking stuff going on in that movie. But like, that's just one of the things where I was just like, whoa. And this was like, really, that was like the big popular movie at the time, Airbag. Um, Freaking weird ass movie. I'll tell you. Mm. Um, Hi Preston. No El Cid parody with George. Are the seven main houses too small? Um, shouldn't there be a lot of cadet branches? All are way too close to extinction. And any thoughts on the Ashara Aries equals Danny? Thanks. I think this is generally a thing that people have been always complaining about. That it's completely unrealistic that any house would be around for 8,000 years. It just doesn't make any sense. There'd either be a lot more of them, or they'd die out, or they'd split, or they'd marry off. Like, it's just, think about that, like, probability sense, like that you would have just male offspring in order to pass on your house name for that many generations. It just wouldn't happen. There'd be a time where you just have a bunch of girls. Like, it's just like, and there'd just be women around. And I understand that there's she-wolves of Winterfell and all that, but like, that actually is not a situation where there's no men. Like, there's plenty of men in that story. They're just all like children and stuff. But it's no, yeah, to have 8,000 years of continuous anything is insane. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. And of course, there'd be all sorts of cadet branches and everybody intermarried and stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely, they're too small. It's rather silly. Some people have joked that maybe Westeros is just a lot smaller than we thought. Like, maybe it's just tiny. Um, but yeah, shouldn't there be cadet branches? Yes. Shouldn't they have changed and been mixed up? And this idea that the Lannisters not only are the ruling family for that long, but have the same like look after 8,000 years of intermarriage and mixing is just utterly ridiculous kind of ideas. With, especially considering they're constantly at war and they're constantly intermarrying, and it's just it's absolutely silly. Um, but I mean, I don't know what parody we would have with El Cid. I mean, El Cid is like a long, complicated story. Um, but um, so I don't know. I don't know what parody would be, but anyway, any thoughts on Aries Ashara equals Danny? Thanks. Hmm. So this is the idea that I imagine that we heard about Ares dishonoring Ashara. That Barristan talks about Ares dishonoring Ashara at um, Harrenhal. Um, Let me get the exact quote. He said, nothing compared to Ashara's daughter had been stillborn. None of the King's Hearts went to Selby. No good in telling it. If he had horsed a Rhaegar and crowned a Ashara, Would they look to? Might have she looked to him instead of Stark? Um, trying to remember who said the dishonor part. Is that from... Here we go. According to Barristan, Ashara was... Yeah, it's in there. Ashara was dishonored by a man at Harrenhal. So this is this idea that somehow... That the reason Dany looks like Ashara is that she actually is Ashara's baby, and that somehow Aerys is the one that dishonored her, and that she was looking to Starks to somehow protect her or something like that. I think my problem with it is that no one else brings it up. You know, like obviously if you're telling the Ashara Dane story, like Catelyn in the very first book, you'd clearly mention the fact that like Aerys was nuts and he raped this woman, and that was part of the Ned. That was an essential part of the Ned Ashara love story. Now you could say, okay, maybe this was like a private incident, but and that only Barristan was privy to it or something. But then it's like, what is she doing? Like, why is she going to the Starks? What does she hope that the Starks would provide her over anybody else? You know, I don't know if it really anything really kind of falls into place. It's just in this idea that, okay, Dany, I mean, Ashara, he thinks she looks like Dany, and Dany has Targaryen features, so she's got to get the Targaryen features from somewhere. So that leaves essentially Rhaegar and Aerys as the only people that can actually impregnate her. And Rhaegar is obsessed with Lyanna at the time, so would he be really the one dishonoring her? Would it be so it would like lead to Aerys, right? I mean, I don't like it because it just doesn't seem to it makes Ashara into this object damsel of distress kind of thing. And so I don't like it in that sense that Ashara is just another damsel. I can understand why the theory would come out. Like, we've got this really weird passage where Barristan is going on and on about Dany looking like Ashara, and that like, and it's not just like a little bit. Like, it's not just, oh yeah, no, that she kind of looks like her. No, it's Daenerys had the same eyes. Sometimes when he looked the queen, when the queen looked at him, he felt as if he were looking at Ashara's daughter. The fact that it's like very, very explicit. But it is just the eyes. It is just the eyes. And the Danes seem to have purple eyes. Darkstar has purple eyes. So, you know, and we wouldn't say that Darkstar is somehow Aerys's child as well. So I think it's I understand where it comes from, but I think it's one can dismiss it pretty easily because we have the Darkstar and we have the does Ned Dane have purple eyes? Or is his blue? I guess it doesn't even say. Oh, here it is, appearance. He's 12, fair hair, pale blonde, dark blue eyes that appear almost purple. No, Ned Dane has them too. He has purple eyes too. So I think you can write it off pretty quick. That, I mean, if we're going to say that Ashara's purple eyes are the thing that makes her Aerys's daughter, or I mean, I'm sorry, the purple eyes are the things that makes Ashara the mother of Dany. Like, then what do we say about Darkstar and Edric? You know, are they getting their purple eyes from that too? So from him too. So I think we can dismiss it pretty easily because the other characters don't. The other characters obviously are not getting their purple eyes from for that reason. So I think that's it because it is just the eyes. It's just the eyes. Feels your fanfic Cersei doesn't have narcissistic PD like book Cersei. Book Cersei rewrites her own observation to make her the hero. Her severe narcissism is why I hate Cersei's point of view chapters. I mean, we try to make Cersei pretty narcissistic and nuts in the fanfic chapter. I mean, she goes into this long weird thing about her and Jaime being like one person, and how like because she's beautiful on the outside, she has a beautiful soul herself, and that she's a good person. There's definitely some weird narcissistic like things in there. Don't get me wrong, that were put in there purposely. So like, we try to make her crazy. We're trying to make her crazy and narcissistic. I mean, she's in there saying like, I'm beautiful and therefore I'm a good person. And it's just like, it's some bonkers logic to get there. Let me try to find the quote. Be the introducing of Nait, right? She says it to Nait. Says I fear for her. She was disfigured by that fiend Darkstar, stripped of all her beauty. Her smile was gentle too. Only the beauty of the flesh. Myrcella's soul remains vibrant and pure. That was empty prattle, she knew. In Cersei's experience, the soul took the shape of the flesh as wine took the shape of the bottle. And how else? It had no other shape to take. If an ugly maid wasn't born bitter, then it would be made so by her ugliness, till bitterness made her ugly within and without. The sound-bodied man grew brave and self-assured, the weak body cowardly and self-loathing. Weren't her own brothers the best example? Jaime and Tyrion looked just like what they are, and so did Cersei, bold and strong and beautiful. You know, so that was what the world saw in Cersei Lannister, and that was what she was inside. So that, you know, that's the idea. We try to make her narcissistic. I mean, she's nuts. She's nuts. But I don't know. I'll keep that in mind as the next Cersei chapter goes forward. You know, keep it in mind to keep her that way. Freys can be red shirts too. That is true. I almost feel like there's so many Freys that they're just going to be killing them off because they want a body to be killed. You know, like these Peter Pimple, like the death of Peter Pimple and Merritt Frey. You know, at the time of reading it, you're like, who are these? Well, they're just random Freys. They're random Freys. I mean, now we all know them, but you know. But I think I agree with you that they're random. I'd say they're almost closer to Stormtrooper, right? Because like at least with Red Shirt is like a good guy that you're supposed to be like, oh no, a random good guy died. Stormtrooper, they're more like Stormtroopers in that like, oh, they died, but we're not really supposed to care about them because they're Freys, right? Which is a little sad. Oh, Trey wanted to paint Elagabalus. Elagabalus was Roman emperor in the third century. The but no, I mean Trey definitely is a big fan of Caligula. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't mean like big fan, like he likes tyrants or anything like that. But I think he agrees that like Caligula gets a bad rap compared to every other emperor who was just as bad as Caligula. And it's just like Caligula was he was young and inexperienced and um they assassinated him pretty quick. He didn't have any support. But for the most part you know he all the emperors were horrible. They were all killing people right and left, and Caligula was no different. But I so um you said in Dunk's trial by 7 that he was the only true knight, but wasn't Risling a true knight as well because he fought for the god's justice, same as Baelor? Um, uh, so I mean, the true knight, I think. See, I'm not sure if I would have. I mean, I'd say that he was the Dunk is the only one that does it for truly noble reasons. I'm trying to let me bring up the quote about Risling, because the idea is that like um at least in the keep in mind show Fossways are a little different than book Fossways. Like with book Fossways, it's more of like a rivalry. Like I want to get back at my cousin, and obviously Baratheon's just there for the glory. Um, but the idea is like what is Risling's uh, stated um, stated reason for joining. Um, and then a couple are just there. One was there because to get revenge on Arion and the horse, and the other was there because of marriage obligations. But let's see here. I mean, let's find out Sir Robin. Does it say does they even give Robin's reasons? Sir Robin prayed. I'm trying to find what the actual quote. Um, so I hear here that he's got a stubborn courage. I'm just trying to see if there's any. Does he say why he's even why why are you fighting Robin Risling? Um, so Aegon Targaryen brought Sir Robin, having known him from previous tourneys. I think we're just not given Robin Reisling's, unless you can find a quote, but I think we're just not given his motivation at all. So I guess, I guess what we can say is if we don't know his motivation, perhaps it was good. I don't know. So, unless we can get a quote on that, but I don't see any motivation given in the story. Mm-mm. Lannisters aren't that bad. It's just Tywin and the family. Mallow the Dornishman, my goat. Yeah, the Lannisters are pretty bad, aren't they? Um, oh, why wasn't Alabama DOJ paying observation and infiltration budget directly to hate groups? Not a bigger story this week, because it's just like nothing's a big story anymore, right? Like it's just all just like it's so commonplace now. Of course, the DOJ was like paying their budget directly to a hate group. Like, are we even surprised anymore? Like, this just isn't. Is that any news? I mean, it should have been. You're right. Like in a proper world, like this kind of fascism like should surprise us, but it's just right now, like the fact that we can be completely unsurprised. Like this is this weird thing, right? Like if it were a different time, like, and the president was like shat his pants in a meeting, like that would be bigger news. But like 2 weeks ago, like Trump shat his pants, and everybody heard him shitting his pants, and they all like ended this meeting, and it was nothing. Like it's just nothing surprises us anymore because it's just all been done. Like talking about dropping nukes, like threatening nuclear war. Meh. Trump being Trump, like nothing surprises us. DOJ funding, you know, hate groups. Yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. Like, move on. What's the next thing to get people's clicks? Yeah, Bravo seems more like Renaissance Netherlands than Venice because of the climate. I mean, it's true. I mean, in Renaissance Netherlands did a lot more of the. I mean, considering how much is based on the War of the Roses and things like that, obviously Netherlands was doing a lot more of the actual money lending than Venice. Um, the interesting thing about both situations is that I say like George knows a lot about history and he's a fucking fantastic writer, but he doesn't really know anything about economics because like at no point do any of the money lenders like influence policy or like or change the course of politics like the Bank of Bravos is supposed to be. Like everybody's fearing them. They're gonna you as if borrowing money from somebody is like as if we're all like borrowing from loan sharks or something, and they're going to come and break our legs, and therefore the loan sharks have power over us. And it's just not how money lending actually like works on a big massive national like international scale. So like this idea of like, oh, Robert Baratheon being like, oh, I owe all this money to Tywin Lannister, he has all this power over me. Why would he have power over you? Don't you have power over him because he's out a bunch of money if he doesn't support you? It's the same when people are like talk about like, oh, China owns so much of like American national debt. Yeah, who cares? Like, doesn't that mean that like we need to be successful in order to get money to pay them back? It, like almost borrowing money from people gives you power over them rather than them having power over you. unless it's like a loan shark situation where there's a real legitimate like force situation, like violence, the threat of violence situation. But if you have no threat of violence, there's no real like threat there. So I admit that like I do think because of climate and because of the War of the Roses connections, like Netherlands does apply more. But and you're right, Netherlands also has canals. I mean, Amsterdam has canals, but yeah, um, I think the way they dress and the use of Bravo and things like that, the names all being Italian sounding, stuff like that, definitely gets the more of the Venice in there. But not in truth, like why Bravo says all its power is uh is not really realistic. Okay, if you could be convinced Quentin is dead, would you consider he might be the character George regrets killing? um, I would say no, only in the sense that like even if I thought that George meant him to be dead, um, it's such an easy out to make him alive again. So why would you regret killing him when you can easily make him not dead? Like you've made his body unrecognizable. So you haven't painted yourself in the corner. Like George has like it's just a point of fact that like he is not painted into a corner with Quentin. If he wanted to make Quentin alive, he could have Quentin alive. If he didn't, he doesn't need to. But it's so easy to bring him back. Um, so he wouldn't need the regret. I think Kevin is much more like the death of Kevin causes so many problems, like problems I really legitimately like recognize in the text. Like the timeline for the Winds of Winter makes no sense now because of Kevin's death and like where things are. Because you need to have that trial, but then you need Mace Tyrell to immediately come back down to face off against John Con, but he wouldn't do that. But he specifically said he wasn't going to do that until the trials were over. But would the Lannisters really tolerate the Tyrells putting Cersei on trial after the death of Kevin and Pycelle without other Lannisters around? So you have to bring in other Lannisters to become regent. It just it there's so many. It's a huge problem. Like Kevin's death is just a huge problem. Um, logistically making King's Landing work. Well, like Quentin being alive or dead, it's just so easy to bring him back. Like it's just plus the one thing about Kevin that makes me think it's not Kevin is like he's not a POV character. So I mean logistically it's a lot better. It would be so much easier if Kevin were alive because you could then have Cersei's try immediately and move on with the plot. But now that Kevin's dead, does it really make sense that they would have Cersei's trial immediately? Like that's straight up war. Um, so yeah, I know I just couldn't I couldn't because it's just like facts on the ground. It's very easy to undo Quentin dying. Like his body's not recognizable. Just bring him back. You know, um, not that hard. Not that hard. Uh, With Spain talk, Preston and Chat should check out the movie Alatriste. Alatriste from 2006 has some hack actor in it from Lord of the Rings. Let's see here. Is this oh yeah, it's got our boy Vigo. Got our boy Vigo in it. Everybody likes some Vigo. They trying to make him look Zorro like. Is that the one of the things about like spending time in Spain is yeah, Spanish, they have all sorts of they have all sorts of looks, you know. You got redheads, you got blondes, you got brown haired people all over the place. They got, you know, but because you want to make a character look Spanish, you've got to like an Antonio Banderas or something, you know. You got to give him this like greasy black hair and be like, I am Spanish. Yeah. I think it's kind of hilarious that they use Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots, because like they're like, who's more Spanish than Antonio Banderas, you know? Nobody can be more Spanish than Antonio Banderas. Spanish cuisine is not filled with saffron. Stares at paella. But when was paella? First of all, I mean, medieval Europe wasn't floating around with rice. Okay, like okay, like paella is what I mean. I guarantee paella is going to be a late invention. Um, Paella was invented in mid 19th century. I mean, this is like talking about like pizza. Like if I were like, oh, you know, they didn't have tomatoes, and somebody being like, but Italians with their pizza. No, the tomatoes come from the New World. Like there was no tomatoes in medieval Europe. There was no rice in medieval Europe. There's no, you know. So I get it though. Obama did deport a lot of immigrants and bombed a lot of children in the Middle East. Well, I mean, Obama, all presidents do that, yes, but yeah, his were mostly in Pakistan, right? In Pakistan, he was most famous for his bombing campaigns. But um, yeah, the deportation. I mean, that's just a regular. That's the thing is like there are regular things that the government just does, like on its own, regardless of the president, because there is Congress and all of this. Um, so, like saying Obama did something is a little disingenuous. Okay, like that's we like ICE exists. Like ICE has always existed. Border Patrol has all. Well, I mean, ICE hasn't always existed. Before that, there was INS, but Border Patrol has existed. Um, and so, like, yeah, of course, immigrants were deported during the Obama administration. Like that didn't stop. But there's a big difference between Obama's policy, which by the way did have a significant shift in that he was focused on deporting criminals. So ICE was directed to prisons to arrest um, uh, people without status once they got out of prison, figuring if we're gonna deport somebody, let's deport the criminals, versus Gestapo gangs going to schools and workplaces and courtrooms and like arresting people there. Big kind of difference. But and yeah, I mean, like, look, I'm the first person to say that, you know, I think America should do a lot less warring. But like, I think there's also a big difference between Obama, who didn't start any wars, versus Trump, who has, you know, started one in Iran and has just given free reign to Netanyahu and things like that. So there is a significant difference, but yes, both sides are bad is only peddled to help the objectively worse side. Notice it is always conservative saying, well, both sides are bad. Absolutely. I agree with you, Alchemist. I think it's I mean, I do think that some people are tricked by it, but I think it's fundamentally a conservative talking point that gets pushed out there, you know. It frustrates me to no end. It frustrates me to no end that that sensible people can just argue amongst themselves and as you know, the barbarians just storm the gates and take over and destroy civilization. Like it's sickening to me. But yes, I completely agree with you, Alchemist, that I think that the story is peddled and created by the right wing to fracture the left. The thing is, but I have legitimately heard like genuine left wing people saying these things, not knowing that they've been tricked. But this, you know, I hear other stuff too. Like, you know, during the Biden years when things are booming, when the economy is booming, I've heard left wing people being like, "Oh man, I can't go out, not in this economy." And you're like, "The economy's doing great, and you have a good job." Like, where did you get that talking point from? Oh, because when the right wing controls all the media, it gets out there, you know, and so it's amazing, you know, that like inflation is worse now than under the Biden administration. But like, do we see any stories about inflation? Do we hear people talking about it as they were under Biden constantly? I mean, we hear specifically about gas prices right now, but for you know, like all the inflation talk just kind of disappeared because of, you know, right wing media. One of my leftist friends has gotten into calling basically any money influence political Paul a fascist. So how do we distinguish that Trump is not Biden, and ask what's worse than a fascist, a Zionist? That's the funny. That is the weird thing is what, like, I mean, for a long time people were using the term fascist and Nazi euphemistically, and now it's actually like when we're here with the real fascists and the real Nazis, like now the term doesn't have any strength anymore. But but it's the same, yeah. Calling any politician who gets donations from a lobby group a fascist. I mean, it's just how the government works. And yeah, it sucks. I would want all lobby groups to be banned and everything, but you've got to get in. You have to elect the right people and get there. And it starts by like electing Democrats, getting them in power, primarying them until they have, you know, even better ones. But you first have to get them in and demand things. Them being out of power doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. It just makes them go, maybe we need to be more centrist when they're out of power, because the right wing is sitting there in power. And so the person out of power is like, how do I get back into power? I guess I act like the person in power to get more votes. That's the idea. I think a lot of people get this idea that like, oh, if we punish them enough, that somehow they'll become like, you know, democratic socialists or something. And you're like, that's not what's going to happen. It's like, if I beat that kid, he'll stop being so violent. No, he's not like, um, oh, back to dyes. I think the dye trade war for think of the dye trade war for wax alone. Each house needs a rainbow of wax for guests sending ravens. Oh, you're right. Imagine a fake Blackwater where a cog leaks green dye and everyone panics. That's kind of funny. Maybe in the fanfic. That's so funny to think that like, oh gosh, there's all this green dye in the water. Oh no. It's just fucking it's just Tairashis. Far too many candles in the story too, though. You're right. Libertarians are evil. GOP is not. GOP is pretty fucking evil, man. They're both really fucking evil. I don't know. Like considering that the GOP is like I say, like trying to give tax cuts to billionaires and banning abortion and telling us that climate change isn't real and telling people that um, that and just capitulating and doing everything for Trump. Like GOP is just the party of Trump. Like there's nothing else. They just do what Trump says. There's no GOP outside of that. Like like the old GOP, which also they sucked. Like Bush, like W Republicans sucked, but they yeah, but they're all gone. He has a bloody sword across his lap too. Yeah, the thing with Jamie, I've really got they haven't really explored like what was going on in his mind. But you know, he's a kid. I guess you could say I was 17. I was like what 17? I was 17. What was I thinking? I don't know. He did say he was tired, but it's a long walk up. What could have set on a step, right? Helps to say Republican politicians are bad because if you just say Republicans bad, the person thinks you're saying that they are bad and doubles down. It's true in a propaganda message sense. I agree with you. I mean, I do think that people that vote for Republicans share the blame. You know, you're either stupid and have been tricked, or you're evil too. Um, and there's a lot of those evil ones. There's a lot of those people on who've been writing on, you know, this is what I voted for and stuff like that. Um, you know, Bush still has a mass like a above water approval rating among Republicans. Um, so it's like, do, 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 do. I've always wondered how and why people in Planetos measure years if the seasons last multiple years. Do you have any idea? So the best explanation people have is that there was a time where the years that the sun did go around the earth and in a yearly fashion, and that something happened to the earth to disrupt this. Um, of course, the problem with that is like, how on earth did the wildlife evolve in only a period of whatever, whether it happened at the long night or something, or before that, in a period of 8,000 years, how did everything evolve to the point that they could survive this shit, you know? And I'm talking like mushrooms underground and, you know, George's version of winter wheat, because George doesn't know what winter wheat is and stuff like that. And, um, you know, people that are able to stock food for decades and stuff like that. Like when we talk about could humanity survive a nuclear winter, you know, it's like, do we even have the technology to do that, right? Because if you created a bunker and you put canned food in it, like how long is that canned food lasting? You know, could we survive? Could society survive 3 or 4 years underground? Like, how are you digging all that out? How are you getting the food down there? How are you packaging it? How are you preserving it? How are you dealing with vitamin D deficiencies and all sorts of other things? And seasonal affect disorder, because you're not going to have the light and depression and all of these things. Like, even today, do we have the technology to survive underground for multiple years? And to say like, oh, medieval society could somehow do this during the long night, or could our human society survive having winter last years where there's no production of food for years? Um, there's no, I don't think we could, right? Like, how did it all like? So on the one hand, I think it makes a lot more sense that the Earth was always had uneven seasons, and therefore the animals and the food and everything evolved to the point where you could survive without food, without crops for years. Um, but I think it's the idea that something happened that made the seasons irregular is why, and that we just have, there's the tradition of the years being there as a remnant of what had happened before. Um, and so, probably something like, either you're coming up with some magic, or there's some mechanism in the wall that's fucking up the earth, or a comet came in and started screwing up the the cycles or something. But or see, I would love it if it were actually like there's a the thing is, it is actually the daylight, because like they make the comment that the days are getting shorter, and so it is an actual winter with shorter days. I wish it were something like, well, winter is actually caused by, there's some nuclear fallout that keeps releasing every so often and creates momentary nuclear winters, and that's causing that. The irregular seasons are nothing more than little nuclear winters every so often. But we hear the maesters talking about days getting shorter and stuff like that. So it is literally like a tilting of the earth that's going on. Something's going on that's tilting the earth to create the seasons to be different. And so I think the solution is really that Planetos used to have regular seasons, regular years, but somehow it lost it, whether it be technology or magic that did it. But how did all the animals and plants evolved? Who fucking knows? Who fucking knows? That's just weird. Oh, if you could ask George R. Martin one question about the lore, no spoilers on the ending, what would it be? Trying to think, like, when I did ask him some questions, I like asked him very specific things, like, are the brave companions coming back? When I talked to him 10 years ago. 10 years ago. I'm trying to think if there's any like lore thing that I'd be really interesting about, because when it really comes down to it, is like when you have an interesting lore question and you ask him, it's usually something he hasn't thought about, or it's some problem he hasn't worked out, and so he's kind of coming up with a solution on the spot. You can see it anytime in the So Speak Martin. It's like people ask a question and he's just like, you can tell he's just making it up right then and there. you know they're like, oh, did Brandon Stark have any kids? And he's like, I don't know if he had any kids, but you said he was like a big womanizer. Couldn't he have a bastard? I guess you could have some bastards out there. Oh, okay. He's just like making it up, like on the spot as he goes along. um so I don't know about lore questions, like what would I mean, I'd be interested to know about what foods they eat during long winters and stuff like that. Have you thought about that? That'd be an interesting question to ask about. Are there nutritious mushrooms underground that they're feeding on? Um, I'd probably ask him about the walls of Karth. I'm sure it's a mistake, but like, Why is the outermost wall, why does the all outermost wall look the most primitive and the innermost wall the most recent? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Is there something to do with like Karth history and them going underground, or is there something like that? I would probably ask him about. I'd like to know about Karth. Oh, finally finished A Thousand Worlds. Love the book club too. Which stories would make the best and worst television adaptations? Um, so there have been two adaptations of Night Flyers, and the one on the second one, the Sci-Fi Channel one, it's not horrible, and they did interesting things. They made it more interesting than the Night Flyers book because they made the Volcrin more than the Volcrin. It didn't get picked up for a second season, so it kind of ends on a big cliffhanger. Um, and Night Flyers, it's not my favorite story at all, but I don't think it does lend itself well for adaptation because it's a traditional kind of horror story, like pick them off one by one kind of horror story. They tried to do an adaptation of Sand Kings. It's completely, utterly different, but I think that would be a really cool story. I think Fever Dream. I mean, if we're talking specifically Thousand Worlds, would Tough Voyaging work as a serialized thing? Where they've talked about you get the actor for Varys to be tough, and he goes in and he goes planet to planet, and there's new adventures every week. Or it'd be okay. I don't know. I'd love to see Dying of the Light. I think would be interesting to see as a movie. Some of them I don't think work that well. I think Sand Kings would work really well. I think Dying of the Light would work well as an adaptation. I think Tough Voyaging would be probably fine. Some of them I don't think would work that well. Like I don't think you could do much with like The Way of Cross and Dragon or this Tower of Ashes or when with Morning Comes Mistfall. Like there's just not enough there. They're too short. I would love to see an adaptation of The Glass Flower. That'd be incredible. That'd be great to see The Glass Flower. That would be an exciting one. Um, yeah. Glass Flower is my favorite. So the World of Ice and Fire only has a Fire and Blood-esque account um, of what's going on. What do you think your interpretation of the cause of events would have been in your case, in that case, without specifics? Are we talking about for which thing? For like the seasons? Um oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The War of the Five Kings only has a Fire and Blood-esque account of what's going on. Oh, what do you think would be interpretation? Okay. You're saying that rather than having what we know from POV situations, we get the War of the Five Kings, but now it's written like Fire and Blood with a maester telling the story. Um, in this case, you would have, because the Lannisters won the war, they would be controlling like the maester account, right? Um, and so I think you get some very bad information because there's a lot of stuff going on that the maesters don't know about. Like you just don't know because Crescent dies. I guess Pylos is there, but um, would you hear about all the things that Stannis is doing? There's no maester at the wall writing stuff down once Stannis goes north. It's very very difficult to figure out what's going on in the Iron Islands. No maester there. No one writing down that history. A lot of secret wheeling and dealing in Dorne, and with regards to the Red Wedding and stuff like that. So like, what would the maesters write as the cause of the War of the Five Kings? Wouldn't they say, like, they would just say like that Ned Stark started a coup over the belief that over the rumor that Joffrey was a bastard. Like, he doesn't have, like, the maesters have no knowledge on Gendry or the books unless they told Pylos. I mean, Pylos would have to write that down because Pylos would know it from Stannis. It all depends on how much Pylos is talking to Stannis. If Pylos talks to Stannis and you get like Pylos's account of what went on, you might be able to piece together that there was at least a strong rumor that Stannis was the true heir because the children were the children of incest, but this was not confirmed. And honestly, if I were reading that, I would think that that was propaganda, and I would think that I'd probably discount it, and I'd be like, no, like, Joffrey was probably trueborn, and that these people were scheming. So I think you're right that in a Fire and Blood sense, I would read the Maester's account. They would mention the incest, and I would say that sounds a little too interesting for real history, and I'd probably throw it out as something that didn't really happen, because my base assumption is that usually the most boring answer is the real history, and that interesting stuff tends not to happen. Like, and if Pylos starts writing things like, oh, there was black arts going on, I'd probably be like, no, there wasn't. Like, I'm sure that would all happen. So I'd probably, if I was reading Fire and Blood, I'd probably come to the conclusion that, yeah, that there really was, or at least Stannis fed Ned Stark information to make him think that there was incest going on. Hello. How
What the
are you?
fuck are you still doing on? What is going on here?
Hey. Yeah, it's midnight. I should.
I literally only just jump on the rush your ass to bed because I could tell you're tired as fuck. I could just see it.
I had to wake up early for Mother's Day. Gotta
I,
gotta
I,
gotta
I'm
take care of the
just.
kids.
I've been recording you for over a decade now. I can easily tell when you're tired, and you're running on fumes, brother.
All right. Well, let me answer a few more, and then I'll head to bed and say sorry to everybody else. Would you swap swag with Trey out of total curiosity? What's the queerest you've ever dressed? I don't know, man. I guess the one thing is that queer people are pretty diverse. There are plenty of queer people that dress just like me. But I know the question. I'm like trying to think, what's the gayest thing I wear? Not much. My shorts are too baggy. People
That
tell me
Greyjoy
that.
T-shirt probably comes in top three.
What's that?
That Greyjoy T-shirt you got on right there,
My
show
Greyjoy
people.
t-shirt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's top three. Ugh.
Trying to think. Yeah, but there's not much. I mean, I don't really wear tight t-shirts. I don't wear short shorts. Um, so I wouldn't be at least in that category of the stereotypical uh, athletics obsessed club going like guy, something like that. So, um, Lancel pulls a Kenobi, kneels and loudly yells his sins till Robert kills him. for Marjorie, 7 stands to defend her, and she turns down trial by 7 since innocent doesn't need bloodshed. It's all possibility. I think, you know, in the chapter call that we put forward, essentially with the trial by 7, is it's unknown if it's going to happen or not. And if it is going to happen, it's going to be off page and people are going to just be talking about it later. Like, fuck, there was this crazy trial by 7. and that's like, that would be how it is, you know. But I mean, I could see something like Lancel believing that God will defend him, you know, and then the gods will defend him, and then nothing happened. So how you doing, man?
Oh, living, surviving, dodging the bullshit out here, the usual. We drove. We drove. I'm with my friend, and she has the Spanish music playing, and we drove past like an ICE patrol, and I told her, turn that off or roll up the window. Well, we ain't doing that today. I was gonna be on the lookout.
Carter supported genocide of East Timor with weapons. I mean, I think he just didn't do anything. They just kind of let it happen. But I don't know if enough people died in East Timor for me to call it genocide. I don't know. What's the limit? How many people does it take to be a genocide? I don't know. I met an Egyptian girl online and we're hitting it off, but I'm worried that our values and beliefs are different, especially in terms of sex and marriage. Any advice, Preston? Love from Tennessee. Ooh, this is a very complicated question. A lot really depends. Is she still in Egypt? Is a big question. And then you have to ask like what class she's from. Is she from, you know, is she from upper class? Is she from middle class? Is she from lower class? Is she Christian or Muslim? Is she very religious? Is she very practicing? And big thing to look out for, there is a not zero chance that, you know, she's had FGM. So like you gotta, you know, like that is a thing. I've had many friends. I wouldn't say many. I don't have many friends in general, but I've had friends. I've had at least 3 friends who have had sex with Egyptian women, and when they started having sex, they started having sex, and they're like, "Oh gosh, she's been FGM'd. Like this is weird." So that's something. That's a big thing. It's a weird thing. But as for like values and beliefs, I mean, it all depends. People are diverse. It's a country of millions and millions of people with different beliefs. But generally speaking, a lot of women in the Middle East, they are up for dating, but they want to get married in like 3 months. Like it's a really short dating to marriage cycle. And generally speaking, they expect that you want to convert. Just, and not that they're necessarily very religious, but for your family, they want you to convert. You know, the same thing would happen if you marry a Jewish girl in America too. She might ask you to convert for her family.
Dude, someone told him the same thing in the stream chat. Like, be prepared to convert. Someone told him the same thing.
Pretty common. Mm-hmm. In fact, a very good friend of mine from Egypt, he's a atheist, vegan French guy who lives in Texas. Oil guy. He's an oil guy. And he married an Egyptian like American girl that he met. And she's like, yeah, you'll have to convert. And he's like, yeah, no big deal. I don't care. And so he converted. You know, he doesn't care. It's in America. I mean, you know, you all know that I'm converted. It's not like converting does anything to you, you know, like it's just there, right? And some people it's a big deal, some people it's not. So most people, if you're not religious, you're like, fine, I'll fucking, You go, it literally takes 15 minutes, you know. So, but like I say, I think the big thing is that a lot they're looking to get married pretty quickly is a big thing. Um, some people are interested in if like is sex on the table during dating. If if she's older or divorced, yeah, sex is usually on the table. If she's never been married and she's a virgin, you're probably gonna have to get married before you have sex, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know. So there, but it's very complicated, very diverse group. But that's but as for values and beliefs being too different, like they're not much different. They're not very different from a religious Christian in America. It's just different religion. You know, it's the same. Like if you were in Utah, like I could switch this up and I could be like, oh, I hit it off with this Mormon girl. I'm worried about our values and beliefs being too different. I'd be like, well, you're probably going to be on an accelerated dating schedule to marriage. You know, she's probably not going to have sex with you until marriage, unless she's been divorced, which Mormons don't get divorced very much. You know, like, um, uh, you know, the Mormon would probably be more overbearing and trying to get you to change your ways, while an Egyptian Muslim girl is like, just do your fucking thing. Like, you know, like she's not going to try to change you as much as say like a Mormon American girl would, you know, or, you know, actually, or an evangelical American Christian girl. Because evangelical Christian girl would be like constantly being like, you need to find Jesus. Like you marry a Muslim girl, she'd honestly be like, look, you know, you converted, you know, that's it. Like you do your thing. Like that's enough. Because like the conversion is already there. You don't have to like believe it in your heart of hearts. Well, like an American Christian would be like, you need to believe it in your heart of hearts. So in some ways, I would say like dating the Muslim girl would be easier than dating a religious American girl, because they don't they're not really trying to convert you on the inside. But oh, what are some good bars in Santo Domingo? I have not been out to many bars. So for the most part, people drink in clamatos here. Um, so there, you know, yes, there's upper class stuff, and so you can go down to the colonial district, and there's going to be people dancing in little side bars, and there are obviously fancy bars, but for the most part, people drink at clamatos, which are just these little grocery stores that exist all through the city, and um, you know, they put out plastic tables, and you just sit and like drink in front of them, and they're everywhere. We, you know, clamato is uniquely Dominican term. Um, you know, and they're everywhere, and people just kind of chill and drink clamatos. So I don't know any like famous ones I can recommend you. It's just that if you're gonna spend time here and you want to drink, you just go to a clamato, you know. But um, so that's, you know, that's the typical Dominican experience. Like if you can go to Clamato and play some dominoes, like that's you've had the true Dominican experience. But yeah, I'm a guy. I'm a married guy with kids. I don't go out. Like some of my friends here go out to Clamatos, but I can't get away with that. I can't get away with that. But you know, unfortunately. Um, so anything you want to talk about before I get off, Carmine?
Now we can save that for like a podcast or something. Because we got to talk about a couple of things. You got to watch stuff because you've been MIA on the entertainment side. You got to watch some
Yeah.
things. Got to get on that.
I'm a gay atheist, so I got out. I got out. Good luck on that. Um, oh yeah, I got. All right, man. Thanks for everyone for being with me. Thank you, Carmine, for checking in on me. Um, and
Of
I'll
course.
try to watch something. He wants me to watch something. He wants me to either watch Maul
Look, this is
or
this was a
Boys.
very this was a yeah, this was a very like April was a very big month for television, specifically superheroes. Boys, Invincible, Daredevil, and then Maul, of course. I'm sure there's another show out there. You got to watch. You watched nothing. You can never get on my case for only watching like the final season of Barry when you're planning on watching the last 3 episodes of The Boys. You can never do that.
Are you sure? Are you? I mean, it seems like it's the same shit over and over again.
Hey, listen, like the showrunner said, you have to go through the season to really like I'm having a good time. I like The Boys.
I mean, do I really need to know what the Israeli guy and the Japanese girl are doing? Is that like essential shit?
The Israeli guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's French in the show. The actor's Israeli.
Oh, Frenchie, yeah. How
Frenchie.
could you forget Frenchie? I'll give you this. I'll give you this. Season 4 was not good. Like I was not a fan of season 4. Season 5 so far has been pretty chill.
Mm. Okay. Okay. There's only so much is going on.
It's the final season. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in the end. I'm interested to see if they do the same ending as the comic book. That's about it.
I will say this though. I will say this, not spoiling it. There are people who are genuinely worried that the end of the show is Homelander wins. There are some people who are actually genuinely worried about that ending.
I mean, like I said, I think the comic book sucks, but I think the ending was somewhat interesting for the comic book, and so um, I don't know if they can pull that off for the show. I think they've already ruined it because like the comic book ending is actually Homelander. You're not that crazy. All this shit you think you've been doing has been Black Noir,
Right.
and he's like, "What? You made me crazy?" And they're like, "Yes," So
Well, if there's one show you should catch up on is Invincible. I know you haven't seen a couple of seasons. That one is amazing year after year. I love Invincible. We'll catch
all
you
right,
up.
man. Thank you very much, and thanks for everybody for being with me. And I will see you guys next time. Later.